Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Star Wars Expanded Universe, narrated by Disney or Lucasfilm, whichever way you slice it. Legends. I only have three things for you today. And boy, what a joy it was. Um, it's all about Ewoks, baby. And yes, for those of you wondering about the title of this video, they are canon to the Legends timeline. And I'll explain to you why when we get there. But for now, let me first talk about the last Star Wars adventure comic, which was Shadows of Endor. So this is a pretty fun little tale. It basically converges everything about the Ewoks. It converges the television show because we have Kenesha and stuff in here. We have a lot of elements from the cartoon that came out, there is one specific character that connects this to the movies of Ewoks, which is the Dothmeri witch, who's on Endor for some reason. The comic never explains why she is, and neither does the movies. So perhaps there's an explanation in some sort of source book or something explaining why she's there. But she's there, therefore making the movie canon to the comic. And of course, the final page is like months later, having Leia be annoyed as Wicket pokes her in episode 6. So it just converges all of that into one, and it's really fun. We got the Dulocs back, we got the we got we got all the characters basically from the show that from the show that you remember, and it's probably my favorite Ewok comic because I was notoriously, if you saw my earlier videos on the Ewok show and comics, I was not too kind to it. It's not that it's bad. I know what it was meant for. On the one hand, I vibed, I gelled well with the Droids TV show, but with the comics of Droids and with the Ewok comics and Ewok shows, I didn't enjoy it. Not really, it wasn't my cup of tea, but this I did thoroughly enjoy. On to the main event, two-parter, which is both movies that were made, the Ewok films that were made in 1984 and 1985. So the reason this is canon to the Legends continuity, if you read Black Fleet Crisis, which it was for like 15 years or something like that before or after the Battle of Yavin, sorry. It's not a huge part of the book, but there is a character who is a news reporter whose name is Sindel. Now, that is a direct reference to these movies because it's the same Sindel from these movies grown up as a news reporter. So it's saying, hey, this did in fact happen. It's canon. So there you go. Not too much to say because these movies are very simple, but I do want to mention, first off, Caravan of Courage, directed by John Kearney? I don't know how to say his last name, but yeah, basically, imagine this. You are very rich, and you made and helped produce a successful, amazing, popular at this point trilogy called Star Wars. Now imagine that your daughters ask you to make a movie about the Ewoks because they really like them in episode 6. And because you have all the money you could ever need, you say, sure, I'll make a movie about Ewoks. Hell, we'll do it in my backyard in Skywalker Ranch. And so that's what happened. We get the Ewok movies. The main characters, of course, being Sindel and Mace, not Mace Windu. Her brother's name is Mace. Basically, their family crash lands on Endor. It's a low-budget movie, or at least it's a lower budget than Star Wars is, so you don't get to see the crash. You just see in the beginning of the movie that the parents are looking for their children, um, and that uh, they're searching with flashlights, but they get chased away by a monster. And you see the crashed ship, but you don't see them getting to that point, and they run off because the monster's chasing them. Um, I was a bit confused about that plot point because later on the Ewoks go back to that site and they find Sindel hiding in there. So I don't know if it's a matter of they fell out of the ship and went back or what happened there. The movie doesn't really go into detail, but the point is this big giant monster dude kidnaps the parents. So now Sindel and Mace are all alone. However, Wicked and friends come and find them. They befriend them, they take them in, and they go on this adventure to go save Mace and Sindel's parents. I have to say, for a child actor, I really enjoyed Mace's and Sindel's performance. I was quite surprised. Now, obviously, Sindel is like the actual actress is like I want to say 4. I looked at some documentary stuff on YouTube. She didn't even know how to read at this point. Okay? So she would have lines said to her, and she, I guess, was a good mimic. Like, she was good at listening to other people talk and then just repeating that. So, and she's a child. Like, not even like a child like in Stranger Things. She's a very, very young kid. So I am not going to gripe on the fact that she's not this Oscar-winning actress. That being said, she did a pretty phenomenal job. I mean, by this point in time, she's an adult, but in 2022. But at the time of filming that, she was a kid who couldn't even read yet. So I'm not gonna harp on the kid for not being this phenomenal actress, but she did do an adequate job, better than I was necessarily expecting a kid her age to do. So props to her. And Mace, I think, was legitimately pretty good for a child actor. Other people may disagree, but I thought Mace did a fantastic job. In fact, I freaking loved Mace in this movie. I mean, he complains a lot, and he doesn't, he's like, I have this rock. What's this rock gonna do? It can't help us. Duh, 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 duh. And other things, he's like, we can't trust these Ewoks. They're just animals. We gotta go. That being said, I really enjoyed his performance. I thought it was a lot of fun. Um, Things that you might be weirded out if you watch this film. There's a lot of magical elements, though if you're a fan of the Ewok shows and comics, you'd be kind of used to that at this point. This was actually pretty tame in comparison to the stuff that goes on in the comics and TV shows, so I was way more accepting of it. I mean, it has to be the Force, but they just use it in a kind of different way because they have, we have Logray still, who's the shaman of the tribe, and I believe he's Force sensitive, and that's why he's able to do like this magic stuff. They just don't know that it's the Force. They don't know what that's called. So I'm okay with that. But by the end of it, of course, they save their parents. They defeat the monster. I felt kind of bad for the monster. I don't know if it was the makeup or what, but I mean, obviously, this happened in the old Marvel comics too, and in many other things where it's like you got this wild animal, you gotta take it out because it's trying to hurt the ones you care about. But at the same time, this thing it's in its own home. It doesn't seem to have that much intelligence, at least from what I got out of it. And so, he just wanted to eat some dinner. He was like really hungry. He left them there. I mean, that doesn't really make sense why he would just imprison them, but whatever. He wanted some food, and then these freaking ants come in here and start messing with him, so I felt kind of bad for the monster. That being said, he kicks the bucket, and our heroes are happy. They have a great time. They hang out with the Ewoks, and they're seemingly going to hang out with the Ewoks until they can repair their ship and go home. Yeah, well, that's where we get into the second novel, which is The Battle for Endor, which the screenplay and direction was by Ken and Jim Wheat, which were brothers. They couldn't get the same guy to do the other one, but as George Lucas likes to do, he likes to watch a lot of old films. And so he was watching some old films, and he watched this film. about this little girl who loses her family and goes on to uh, find this old man, and they kind of develop this relationship. And so he told everybody, "That's what you're gonna do." Yeah. So at the beginning of this film, within the first like 5 to 10 minutes, literally all of the first film is rendered pointless because every single person, the parents, and my boy, Mace, dies unceremoniously without any heroic end. They kick the bucket and die. Now, for the parents, I really don't care. They're barely in the first movie, but I really grew to love Mace. I thought he was really cool. I liked him about as much as I like Zack and Tash in the Galaxy of Fear Young Adult series. I would have loved to see more of Mace. I would have loved to see him, in a short story during New Jedi Order, piloting a ship or something, helping our Jedi heroes, in his small way that he can. Something like that, because even normal people can help out, but he dies. A man that we spent the whole first movie with, who's arguably more of a main character than Sindel is, dies within the first 5 minutes of the second film. If that doesn't show you how dark things get in the 80s, I don't know what will. The same thing you got with Return to Oz being terrifying. But yeah, so that happens. Also interesting this time, the dad got recasted by the principal from Breakfast Club. We also have, of Dune fame, not the new one that came out, the one from the 1980s by David Lynch. We have the one that played the Reverend Mother, whatever the fudge they're called. The one who does the Jabbar thing. She's playing a Doth-Mary witch in here, which again connects to that comic. Their comic connects to this movie, and they don't really explain a lot of things there. I don't know if there's any story or source book that explains it. She's just kind of helping out this faction on Endor because, I assume she kind of crash landed at some point on this planet and is kind of stuck there, and she wants to get off, but there's been no ships. So helping these guys is a way to get home, I guess. I don't know, because that's all me just like speculating, because it doesn't tell us anything. So, but yeah, she's a Doth-Mary witch, which is definitely a connection to the EU because they were introduced in the EU. But basically, Sindel and Wicket, they're running away in fear because the Ewoks have been captured. Her parents are dead. They come upon this hut where they find Sonic. Okay, not Sonic, but it is this really fast animal. And then they meet this old man named Noah. And he's been trapped on Endor for who knows how long. But his best friend was with him, and they were trying to explore the galaxy or whatever. But the ship crash landed on Endor. And his friend went to go search for power to fix the ship. And the guy dies. And so he never got to see his friend again. He was stuck on the planet. And he kind of, takes Sindel in, kind of becomes his surrogate father, which is what George wanted. And the MacGuffin is the ship from the first movie has this, power cell, like, power ships or whatever. And the bad faction wants it because they're like, this can give us power, but they don't realize how power works. Like that it's got to be connected to something, that it in of itself is just like a battery, essentially. But, the heroes win, they triumph, they defeat the bad guys, and they end up leaving, or Sindel and the old man Noah end up leaving on the ship, leaving the Ewoks behind, because they have to be just the Ewoks by the time episode 6 comes around. And then they head out back into space, going to live their best life, and then she'll become a news reporter way down the line. And that's basically, those two movies. I will say some of the weird parts, I don't know how to necessarily reconcile them. Wicked could say basic sentences in the first movie, which I was more accepting of. He could say basic things because he was kind of learning from Sindel. But they spend approximately a few months on Endor, before all this crap goes down. And by this film, he's just speaking almost fluent English or basic. And I'm like, really? And if that's the case, unless I did my timeline wrong, if this is before episode 6, then why doesn't he talk in episode 6? Perhaps he just forgets. I don't know. Maybe he hits his head or something. Point is, by episode 6, he doesn't speak English. But yeah, this was definitely a lot more fun than I expected it to be. I really enjoy these two films. They're not much. They're very basic, simple plots. But at the same time, they are filled with such innocence. At least the first one is filled with such innocence and heart. And the second one's filled with heart too. But it's a bit more darker because, we literally start with the parents getting murdered, you know. So that's a lot. But I think there are fun little stories within Star Wars as a universe as a whole and within the expanded universe. They're not much, but I do think, they're worth your time. And just think about it like a parent. Imagine you had the opportunity to make a film for your kids and then you just do it. I mean, that's pretty awesome. So props to George Lucas for being a cool dad. Um, but yeah, and the way they did a lot of the special effects may not have aged the greatest, but it's also like straight to TV or whatever. So I'm not gonna gripe on that too hard either. It still looks pretty good. Some of the tag or the fudge his name is the Teak, the fast alien. Well, it's a woman inside the suit, but there's some good animation work there. I felt so. Not animation, like robotic facial things. I enjoyed that. But yeah, I think we're pretty much done with Ewoks until episode 6. But it was an absolute blast to watch these two films. I enjoyed them immensely more than I expected to, and I do recommend you take the time to check them out at least once. Form your own opinion. If you're expecting high art, you're gonna be disappointed. I know George Lucas makes the excuse that the actual Star Wars films are meant for children. When clearly he writes some stuff that's a bit more adult oriented. But this one was, got awards for being like a best children's television programming or whatever. So this one was heavily more directed for kids. So if you're willing to just like accept that, then I think you'll find something wonderful out of it. But that's pretty much it, guys. Thank you all so much for watching. As we move forward, we shall continue with the old Marvel comics until we get to Shadows of the Empire by Steve Perry. Until then, guys, may the Force be with you.